HR told me, be grateful for the job. So I led the hostile takeover of the entire company. I knew I had nothing left to lose when Hannah from HR pushed that blackened banana across the table in the fake vintage wooden bowl they used to showcase company culture. We don't feel this is the appropriate time to discuss promotion opportunities. Lila. I had launched their most successful marketing campaign, revamped their entire brand identity, and kept a major client from jumping ship to a competitor. Yet all I got in return was advice to be grateful you have a job. They thought I would bow my head. Instead, I turned their entire company into my trophy. My name is Lila Morgan. For 4 years, I was the strategy director at Clearleaf Media, a mid-sized marketing agency that specialized in disruptive solutions but couldn't disrupt its way out of a paper bag. I joined them fresh out of my MBA with stars in my eyes and fire in my belly. By year 2, the stars had dimmed. By year 4, they were dead, replaced by a cold, calculated rage that even I didn't fully recognize. I sat across from Hannah that Tuesday afternoon, her perfect French manicure tapping against the mahogany conference table. Behind her sat Marcus Denton, our chief operating officer, a man whose primary talents included taking credit for women's ideas and wearing suspenders that matched his pocket squares. The leadership team feels you still need to develop certain qualities before we can consider you for the creative director position, Hannah continued, her voice dripping with rehearsed sympathy. Qualities, I echoed, keeping my voice steady. I'd prepared for this meeting for weeks, bringing a portfolio of accomplishments that would make most executives salivate. The Vision Wave campaign alone had increased client conversion by 62%. The Barrow Logistics rebrand had been featured in 3 industry publications. Marcus cleared his throat. Executive presence, Lila. Gravitas, the kind of leadership aura that inspires confidence. What he meant, of course, was that I lacked a penis. I see, I said, closing my portfolio with deliberate care. And when Jeremy pitched the Omnitech campaign, my campaign, to the board last month, did he have enough gravitas? Hannah and Marcus exchanged the briefest of glances. Jeremy has been with us for 7 years, Hannah replied smoothly. He understands our culture. Our culture? The phrase made my skin crawl. Clearleaf's culture consisted of mandatory happy hours, competitive overworking, and an unspoken understanding that the women wrote the decks and the men presented them. In this economy, Hannah added, pushing the fruit bowl toward me in what I suppose she thought was a conciliatory gesture. We should all be grateful to have stable employment. Many agencies are downsizing. I stared at that pathetic banana, bruised, past its prime, unwanted, yet expected to be grateful for its place in the decorative bowl. I took the banana, smiled, and walked out. That night, I drank an entire bottle of Cabernet in my apartment, staring at LinkedIn and watching my former classmates celebrate promotions, launches, and successes. Around midnight, after I'd switched from wine to whiskey, a job posting caught my eye. Anonymous, minimal details, but the description hit me like a fist to the sternum. Seeking strategic disruptor for competitive intelligence division, previous agency experience required, discretion mandatory. The company wasn't named, but I recognized the style and language immediately. Thorne's Stratagem, our most ruthless competitor. Known for surgical precision in taking down established players, their CEO, Victoria Thorne, was a legend in our industry, a woman who'd built her empire on the ashes of her competitors. I sent my resume with a single line in the cover letter. Ask your board if they're ready to win. I expected nothing. I received a calendar invite at 3:17 a.m. for a meeting the following day with Victoria Thorne herself. The hangover I nursed the next morning was epic, but I showed up at Thorne's Glass Tower headquarters looking immaculate in my most intimidating suit. The receptionist, a man with the physique of a former military operative and the smile of someone who knew too many secrets, escorted me directly to the elevator. He swiped a keycard, pressed the button for the 47th floor, and stepped back without a word. The elevator opened directly into an office that overlooked the entire city. Floor-to-ceiling windows created the illusion that the room was suspended in mid-air. At the center, behind a desk that appeared to be a single slab of volcanic stone, sat Victoria Thorne. I'd seen her in industry photos, of course, always in the background of boardroom shots, always watching while others posed. But photos hadn't captured the sheer force of her presence. She was older than I expected, perhaps in her early 60s, with a silver bob cut with laser precision and eyes that evaluated everything with clinical detachment. "Sit," she said, not looking up from her screen. I sat. "Clearleaf is dying," she stated, finally meeting my gaze. "I want to know if it's worth saving or if I should put it out of its misery." No pleasantries, no interview questions about my greatest weaknesses or where I saw myself in 5 years. Just a surgical strike at the heart of the matter. "Why do you care what I think?" I asked. The corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "Because you've spent 4 years trying to save a sinking ship, and you're still showing up to bail water. Either you're loyal to a fault, or you're waiting for the right moment to jump. I want to know which." I leaned forward. "Ask me why Clearleaf doesn't deserve to exist." Her eyebrow raised a fraction of an inch, the Thorne equivalent, I would learn, of shocked surprise. For the next hour, I dissected Clearleaf's weaknesses with cold precision. Their outdated creative processes, their bloated middle management, their cash flow vulnerabilities, the toxic internal culture that drove away talent and innovation. I named names, I cited figures, I predicted breaking points. When I finished, Victoria didn't speak for a long moment. Then she pressed a button on her desk. The receptionist appeared with a folder, which he placed before me. "This is your contract," Victoria said. "Your title is Special Projects Director. Your salary is double what Clearleaf pays you. Your bonus structure is tied to market share acquired directly from Clearleaf Media." I stared at her. "You're hiring me to destroy my own company." "I'm hiring you to finish what their leadership started," she corrected. "The question is whether you have the stomach for it." I signed without reading the fine print. Some might call it reckless. I called it the most clarity I'd felt in years. I gave Clearleaf my 2 weeks' notice the next day. Hannah from HR conducted my exit interview, asking listless questions from a standard form while Marcus hovered in the doorway, already eyeing my office for reassignment. "Where are you going next?" Hannah asked, barely looking up from her form. "Taking some time to reflect on my career goals," I replied with practiced blandness. Marcus snorted. "Good luck out there. The market's tight." I smiled. "I'm sure I'll land on my feet." "Well," Hannah said, pushing another form toward me. "Remember that your non-compete prevents you from working with direct competitors for 12 months. I signed it with a flourish. The non-compete had been written in 2008 and never updated. It specifically named 6 competitors. Thorne's stratagem, being less than 10 years old, wasn't one of them. My first day at Thorne began at 6 a.m. in what they called the bunker, a windowless suite of offices on the 32nd floor with biometric security and signal-blocking technology built into the walls. My team consisted of 3 people, each selected by Victoria personally. Silas was our cybersecurity specialist, a former ethical hacker with unnerving stillness and eyes that never quite focused on your face. Mina was our forensic accountant, a woman who could smell financial irregularities like sharks smell blood. And Jules. Jules was my secret weapon. He'd been Clearleaf's strategy director before me, fired by Hannah after he raised concerns about ethical corners being cut on the Meridian Pharmaceuticals account. "Welcome to War Room," Jules said, gesturing around the Stark space. "Hope you're not claustrophobic." "I spent 4 years in a glass fishbowl having my ideas stolen," I replied. "Concrete walls are an improvement." Victoria's instructions had been clear. We had 6 months to make Clearleaf vulnerable enough for acquisition. Not bankruptcy, that would scatter their client base to the winds, but weak enough that their board would see a Thorne takeover as salvation rather than defeat. We started with intelligence gathering. Silas mapped Clearleaf's digital infrastructure, identifying security weaknesses and access points. Mina analyzed their public financial disclosures. building a model of their actual financial situation versus the image they projected to clients. Jules cataloged organizational weaknesses, personality conflicts, and pressure points. And I planned our first strike. VisionWave was Clearleaf's flagship product, an integrated marketing platform they'd developed to compete with larger agencies. I knew from my time there that it was buggy, over budget, and being pushed to market despite serious technical issues. The development team had been raising red flags for months, only to be silenced by Marcus and his cronies. We need to make VisionWave toxic, I told my team, not destroyed, just concerning enough that clients hesitate. Silas looked up from his laptop. We could leak the internal testing reports. I shook my head. Too obvious. We need something more organic. The leak appeared 3 weeks later. An anonymous post on a niche financial blog detailing technical issues with VisionWave. Nothing confidential. Nothing that couldn't have been deduced by a savvy observer. Just enough to raise questions. The post was picked up by larger outlets, and suddenly, Clearleaf was on the defensive. Inside Clearleaf, I knew exactly what was happening. Their Slack channels would be on fire. Marcus would be demanding to know who talked to the press. The development team would be working around the clock to fix issues they'd been flagging for months. And clients would be calling, asking uncomfortable questions. Clearleaf's stock dipped slightly, just enough to make investors nervous, not enough to trigger SEC attention. Phase 1, complete. For Phase 2, we targeted Clearleaf's client relationships. Specifically, Barrow Logistics, their largest account. Barrow was old school, risk-averse, and pathologically devoted to stability. Their CEO, Howard Barrow, was third generation and viewed marketing as a necessary evil rather than a strategic investment. I had handled the Barrow account personally at Clearleaf. I knew their pain points, their communication style, their deep-seated fear of looking foolish in front of their traditional client base. We created a ghost campaign, a series of targeted messages that would appear only to Barrow's executive team, highlighting Thorne's stratagem stability, traditional values, and understanding of logistics marketing, not attacking Clearleaf directly, but planting seeds of comparative doubt. 2 months later, Howard Barrow requested a meeting with Victoria. 3 weeks after that, Barrow Logistics signed with Thorne, bringing their $45 million annual marketing budget with them. Clearleaf's stock dropped 14% on the news. The morning after the Barrow announcement, I received a text from an unknown number. Coffee, Old Place, 2 p.m., Reed. Reed Chen had been the one decent creative director at Clearleaf. He'd advocated for my promotion, mentored younger staff, and generally tried to counterbalance the toxic culture. I hadn't spoken to him since leaving. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him. Reed looked haggard when I found him in the corner of our old coffee shop. The perpetual spark in his eyes had dimmed, and he'd lost weight. "You look like hell," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Clearleaf is imploding," he replied without preamble. After Barrow left, they started layoffs. 20 people last week, mostly from creative. I kept my face neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that." Reed studied me. "Are you?" "I'm sorry for the people who lost their jobs," I clarified. "Not for the company." He nodded slowly. "They're saying things about you, Lila, the executive team. They're blaming the Barrow loss on your relationship with Howard." "What relationship?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "They're implying you had inappropriate influence over him. That's why he followed you to Thorne." The rage I thought I'd left behind flared hot in my chest. I've never even met Howard Barrow in person. All our communication was through his team. Reed shrugged. "Truth isn't their priority right now. Survival is." He leaned forward. "They're calling you damaged goods that Thorne rescued out of charity." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what you wanted to tell me, that they're smearing my reputation?" "I wanted to warn you," Reed said quietly, "and to ask if there's a place for me at Thorne. I can read the writing on the wall. Lila, Clearleaf won't survive this." I studied my old mentor. Reed was talented, ethical, and knew Clearleaf's operations intimately. He would be an asset, but something in his eyes made me hesitate. Take a vacation. Read, I said finally. A long one. Go somewhere without cell service for a few weeks. Why? Because there's about to be an earthquake, and I don't want you under the rubble when it hits. Phase 3 was the killing blow. We'd been building to it methodically, gathering evidence, connecting dots, preparing the battlefield. Now it was time for the final assault. Mina had discovered financial irregularities in Clearleaf's quarterly reports. Nothing massive, but consistent patterns of revenue manipulation that violated SEC guidelines. Silas had uncovered internal emails documenting how Hannah and the HR team had buried sexual harassment complaints against 2 senior executives. And Jules had compiled a dossier of client complaints that had been systematically ignored or hidden from shareholders. None of it was criminal, all of it was damning. We released everything simultaneously to financial reporters, industry blogs, and directly to Clearleaf's major shareholders, not as a Thorn attack, but as a series of concerned whistleblower revelations that happened to hit all at once. Clearleaf's stock went into freefall. 3 major investors pulled out. The CEO called an emergency board meeting, and Victoria Thorn issued a public statement expressing concern about industry practices and Thorn Stratagem's commitment to ethical business operations. 24 hours later, Victoria's phone rang. It was Clearleaf's chairman of the board, requesting an urgent meeting to discuss potential strategic partnerships. Translation: please buy us before we collapse entirely. Victoria agreed to host them the following morning, and she asked me to lead the acquisition team. I spent that night in my office, preparing, not just the financials or the strategy, but myself. This wasn't just business anymore. This was personal vindication. My chance to look Hannah and Marcus in the eyes as their company crumbled beneath them. The Clearleaf delegation arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. 6 people: the chairman, the CEO, the CFO, Marcus, Hannah, and their legal counsel. They were escorted to the conference room on the 46th floor, 1 level below Victoria's office, a subtle power play that wouldn't be lost on them. They didn't know I would be there. They didn't know I had orchestrated their downfall. They didn't know they were walking into my carefully laid trap. I let them wait for 17 minutes, long enough for anxiety to build, not long enough to justify anger. Then I walked in, followed by Victoria and our acquisition team. The looks on their faces were worth every sleepless night of the past 6 months. Hannah's perfect composure cracked like thin ice. Marcus's mouth actually fell open. The CEO, a man who had never once remembered my name during 4 years, went pale. Ms. Morgan will be leading our transition team, Victoria said smoothly, taking her seat at the head of the table. She has intimate knowledge of Clearleaf's operations that will be invaluable during this process. This is inappropriate, the CEO blustered. Ms. Morgan is a former employee who what? I interrupted, my voice cool and precise. Who launched your most successful campaigns? Who kept Barrow Logistics with you for 3 years despite multiple failures on your part? Who warned you about the Vision Wave technical issues that you chose to ignore? The chairman cleared his throat. We're not here to rehash personnel matters. We're here to discuss Thorn's acquisition offer. Of course, I replied, sliding folders across the table. You'll find our terms inside. The executive summary is simple. We're offering to acquire Clearleaf at 30% below current market value, with no retention of current executive leadership. Marcus made a choking sound. That's highway robbery. That's the market speaking, Victoria corrected. Your stock has lost 42% of its value in 3 months. Your largest client has left. You have potential SEC compliance issues that our legal team has graciously not yet reported. This isn't robbery, Mr. Denton. This is a lifeline. Hannah leaned forward, her professional mask back in place. Our shareholders would never approve such terms. We have options. I smiled at her. The same smile I'd given her the day of my exit interview. Do you? Please, enlighten us about these options. The legal counsel. A sharp-eyed woman who seemed to be the only one grasping the reality of their situation, placed a hand on Hannah's arm. Perhaps we should review the full terms before continuing the discussion. For the next 2 hours, we dissected Clearleaf piece by piece, their valuable assets, their liabilities, their talent worth retaining, their dead wood to be cut. I led the discussion with surgical precision, exposing every weakness, every failure, every missed opportunity. By the time we broke for lunch, the fight had gone out of them. The chairman and CEO huddled in whispered conversation. The legal counsel made rapid notes. Marcus stared at the table, his face ashen. And Hannah watched me with a mixture of hatred and something that might have been respect. When we reconvened, the chairman spoke directly to Victoria. We'd like to propose a counter-offer. Same valuation, but with a transition period for current leadership and guaranteed severance packages. Victoria turned to me. Ms. Morgan, your thoughts? I let the silence stretch, enjoying the weight of it. 4 years of being ignored, overlooked, and undervalued, and now they waited on my word. Transition periods create uncertainty, I said finally. Clean breaks are better for morale and client retention. As for severance, I opened my laptop, made a show of checking figures. We can offer industry-standard packages for all executives except Mr. Denton and Ms. Calloway, Marcus and Hannah, of course. That's outrageous, Hannah said, her composure finally cracking. On what grounds? I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, tapped the screen a few times, then set it in the center of the table. Pressed play. Hannah's voice filled the room. In this economy, we should all be grateful to have stable employment. Many agencies are downsizing. Then my own response, clearer than I remembered. So despite bringing in the Barrow account, leading the Vision Wave launch, and increasing creative output by 40%, I should just be grateful for a paycheck? Hannah again. Quite frankly, Lila, yes. Women like you are a dime a dozen in this industry. In times like these, you should be thanking us for the opportunity. I stopped the recording. That meeting was 4 months ago. Connecticut is a one-party consent state for recordings, in case you're wondering. The room was silent. The chairman wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. The CEO studied the ceiling as if architectural details had suddenly become fascinating. Your employment practices leave much to be desired, Victoria said into the silence. We'll need to review all HR records as part of our due diligence. Hannah's face had gone from red to white. You planned this, she said to me. From the beginning, you've been working against us. I've been working exactly as I always did, I corrected her. With precision, strategic thinking, and attention to detail. The only difference is that my work is now valued appropriately. The meeting ended 30 minutes later. The chairman agreed to present our offer to the board with his recommendation to accept. The CEO looked shell-shocked. The legal counsel gave me a small nod as they filed out, one professional acknowledging another. Hannah and Marcus were the last to leave. As they reached the door, I called out, Hannah! She turned, her expression guarded. Thank you, I said. For what? For teaching me gratitude, I smiled. All of this is my thank you note. The acquisition was finalized 3 weeks later. Clearleaf Media ceased to exist as an independent entity. Its valuable parts were absorbed into Thorne's stratagem. Its deadwood was discarded. I oversaw the entire transition, making decisions about people's careers with the same cold efficiency that had once been used against me. Was it revenge? Absolutely. Was it also sound business? Without question. Thorne's market position strengthened, our client roster expanded, and our reputation for ruthless efficiency grew. Victoria called me to her office the day after the final papers were signed. She still sat behind that volcanic slab of a desk, still watched me with those clinically detached eyes. But now there was something else in her expression, a flicker of what might have been approval. You exceeded expectations, she said, pushing a folder across the desk. Your bonus and your new contract. I opened it. The figures made me blink. Executive Vice President, Strategic Operations. I read aloud, reporting directly to you. You've earned it, Victoria said. The question now is, what's your next target? I thought about it. About the past 6 months of calculated destruction, about the satisfaction of watching something toxic crumble, about the power of being valued for exactly who I was. What's the biggest agency that still has an all-male executive team? I asked. Victoria's mouth curved in what was almost a smile. I'll have a list on your desk tomorrow. I stood to leave, but Victoria wasn't finished. One more thing, Lila. The man you warned, Reed Chen, he's talented, ethical, potentially valuable. Why tell him to run? I considered my answer carefully. Because some people aren't built for war. Reed creates things. He doesn't destroy them. The world needs both types. Victoria studied me for a long moment. And which are you? I thought about the girl who had joined Clearleaf 4 years ago, full of ideas and optimism. About the woman who had systematically dismantled an entire company out of spite and ambition. About the executive I was becoming, with power and resources at my fingertips. I'm whatever I need to be, I answered. That's why you hired me. She nodded once, dismissing me. As I reached the door, she spoke again. The banana was a nice touch. I turned. Excuse me? In your first meeting with Hannah, the blackened banana in the wooden bowl, symbolism matters in these narratives we create. I stared at her. How did you? I make it my business to know things. Lila, remember that? The door closed behind me with a soft, expensive click. My name is Lila Morgan. For 4 years, I was the strategy director at a company that told me to be grateful for scraps. Now I'm an executive vice president at the company that helped me burn it to the ground. Was it petty? Perhaps. Was it disproportionate? Possibly. Do I regret it? Not for a single second. Because here's what I learned through this entire Scorched Earth campaign. Power isn't given. It's taken. Respect isn't requested. It's demanded. And sometimes, the only way to change a toxic system is to destroy it completely and build something better from the ashes. Hannah from HR taught me to be grateful. So I am. I'm grateful for the clarity of purpose that her dismissal gave me. I'm grateful for the fire that her condescension lit within me. I'm grateful for the lesson that sometimes, the only appropriate response to being undervalued is complete and utter decimation. The next company on our acquisition list is 3 times the size of Clearleaf. Their CEO made headlines last year for saying that women lack the killer instinct needed for truly innovative marketing. I've already started making notes. After all, I have so much to be grateful for.